Most people think the biggest financial mistake they'll ever make is choosing the wrong job, making a bad investment, or not earning enough money. But for almost everyone, the biggest mistake feels like success. That's why it's so dangerous. Because you don't regret it. You celebrate it. Think back to the happiest financial moment of your life. Maybe it was the email saying you'd been promoted. Maybe it was the biggest paycheck you'd ever received. Maybe it was finally signing the lease on a nicer apartment. For a few days, life felt different. You told yourself, I'm finally getting ahead. But here's the question almost nobody asks. If that moment was supposed to change your life, why are so many people still waiting to feel free? Not just celebrities. Not billionaires. Ordinary people. Teachers. Engineers. Nurses. Business owners. People making more money than they ever imagined. Yet somehow feeling just as financially stuck as they did years ago. Something doesn't add up. Because we've all been taught the same equation. Work harder. Earn more. Life gets easier. So why does the finish line keep moving? Here's a moment you probably know. It's late at night. The house is quiet. You unlock your phone. Open your banking app. Look at the balance. And for a split second, you feel relieved. Then almost immediately, your mind starts subtracting. Rent. Car payment. Credit card. Insurance. Groceries. That feeling of relief disappears before you even lock your phone. The money arrived. But somehow it never felt like yours. How is that possible? How can someone earn more every year, yet never feel further ahead? That's the mystery. And the strange part is, the answer has almost nothing to do with your paycheck. In fact, the harder many people work to escape the rat race, the faster they seem to run back into it. Not because they aren't disciplined. Not because they aren't intelligent. Not because they don't deserve success. But because they're chasing something they were never taught to question. Once you notice it, you'll see it everywhere. In your coworkers. Your neighbors. Your parents. Your friends. Maybe even in yourself. Now imagine two coworkers. Same age. Same company. Same starting salary. They work the same hours. They earn the same raises. On Friday night, they're sitting across from each other in the same restaurant, celebrating what feels like the beginning of a better life. If you walked past their table, you'd swear they were living the exact same story. 10 years later, they couldn't be further apart. One wakes up because he wants to. The other wakes up because he has to. Same opportunities. Same income. Completely different future. So, what changed? Because whatever separated those two lives, neither of them noticed it while it was happening. And that's exactly why almost nobody escapes the rat race. So, what was the difference between those two coworkers? It wasn't a better investment. It wasn't a lucky break. It wasn't even the size of the raise. The difference started long before either of them noticed it. Picture this. It's Monday morning. You get the email. Congratulations. Your salary has increased. For the rest of the day, you can't stop smiling. You call your parents, your partner, maybe even your best friend. For the first time in months, life feels lighter. It feels like proof that all the long hours meant something. Then, something almost invisible happens. Not the next day. Not even the next week. A few months later, the bigger paycheck stops feeling bigger. The apartment you were proud of starts feeling ordinary. The car that made you turn around every time you parked it becomes the car you complain about washing. The expensive dinner that celebrated your promotion becomes Friday. Nothing got worse. Your brain simply moved. Normal. Psychologists call this hedonic adaptation. But you don't need to remember the name. You've lived it. Think about your first paycheck. Do you remember looking at that number over and over, wondering if it was real? Now imagine earning that exact amount today. It probably wouldn't even change your mood. Not because you've become greedy. Because your brain is built to normalize improvement. And this is where the trap quietly closes. Every time life becomes more comfortable, your definition of enough quietly changes with it. The finish line doesn't disappear. It walks away from you. So the next raise doesn't feel like progress. It feels necessary. Not because you're buying yachts or private jets, but because last year's luxury quietly became this year's monthly expense. The streaming subscriptions, the nicer apartment, the newer SUV, the weekend trips. None of them felt irresponsible on their own. Each one felt deserved. And that's exactly why the trap is so hard to see. Nobody wakes up trying to build a lifestyle they can't escape. It happens one reasonable decision at a time. This is where those two coworkers quietly separated. One looked at every raise and asked, "What can my life look like now?" The other asked, "What can this money look like in 10 years? Almost the same question. Completely different future. Because money follows a strange rule. The things you spend on become invisible. The things you invest in become exponential. One grows louder. The other grows larger. But here's what makes the rat race almost impossible to escape. Nobody around you calls it a rat race. They call it success. Your coworkers upgrade. Your friends upgrade. Social media applauds every visible symbol of progress. A better house. A better watch. A better vacation. A better zip code. Slowly, without anyone saying it out loud, you stop measuring success by freedom. You start measuring it by evidence. By things people can see. And the moment that happens, you've already stepped onto the treadmill. Because the trap was never spending money. The trap was believing that looking successful was the same thing as becoming wealthy. Part 3. That's the biggest illusion of the rat race. It doesn't punish you for making bad decisions. It rewards you for making comfortable ones. That's why almost nobody realizes they're trapped. Because every step feels like progress. Every promotion feels like proof. Every raise feels like validation. Every upgrade feels deserved. Until one ordinary morning. Nothing dramatic happens. No financial crash. No bankruptcy. No emergency. Just a quiet realization. You wake up. Check your calendar. Look at the mortgage. The car payment. The subscriptions. The insurance. The credit card bill. Then you realize something you've never admitted out loud. You can't afford to stop. Not because you're poor. Because your lifestyle became your employer. And suddenly, the freedom you thought you were buying has been quietly buying you. That's the moment the rat race finally reveals itself. Not as a job. Not as a boss. Not as capitalism. As dependence. Because the real prison was never working 9 to 5. Millions of people love their jobs. Millions build meaningful lives through work. The prison begins the moment your future depends on maintaining a lifestyle your past created. That's what separated those two co-workers. Not intelligence. Not luck. Not investing genius. One believed every raise belonged to his future before it belonged to his lifestyle. The other believed every raise belonged to the person he wanted the world to see. Neither choice felt dramatic. Both felt reasonable. But reasonable decisions, repeated for 10 years, create unreasonable differences. Here's the distinction almost nobody talks about. Income buys options. Wealth buys time. Those are completely different currencies. Income can buy the house. Wealth can buy the freedom to leave it for 6 months. Income can buy the vacation. Wealth can make work optional when you come home. Income impresses strangers. Wealth protects your future. And that's why real wealth is almost invisible. You rarely notice the person who isn't stressed when layoffs begin. You rarely notice the person who smiles during a market downturn because they prepared years earlier. You rarely notice the family eating dinner together because nobody is working a second job to keep up appearances. Freedom doesn't announce itself. It simply removes fear. Maybe that's why so many people spend decades chasing the image of success, while accidentally walking away from the feeling they wanted all along. security, choice, peace. The truth is, money never trapped them. Their definition of success did. Because every payday asks the same question: what will this money buy? Most people answer with today. A few answer with tomorrow. Those answers slowly become habits. Habits become identities. And identities become lives. So the next time your income grows, don't ask, what can I afford now? Ask, what kind of person is this money helping me become? Because every dollar gives you a vote. One vote for the life everyone can see. Or one vote for the freedom almost nobody notices. You don't build wealth in one decision. You build it in thousands of invisible ones. Remember this. The rat race doesn't begin when you get a job. It begins the day you confuse earning more with needing more. And it ends the moment you realize success was never supposed to buy a better lifestyle. It was supposed to buy a better future. If this changed the way you think about money, subscribe. Every week, we uncover the invisible decisions, hidden psychology, and wealth stories that separate people who only look successful from the people who quietly become free.